can just start. Okay.
I just sent them the link, so you're good. You're good to go whenever.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about attention-seeking behaviors and strategies that we can use. This video will be recorded, so if you're not comfortable with that, you can always turn off your camera or your microphone. So just a little bit about me. My name's Emilia Macchione. I am a BCBA. Sorry, hold on a second. My business is the Beautiful Mind Academy. I started in the field in 2017 and worked my way into becoming a BCBA later on. So I started off initially as an IT, worked my way into an ST position, and now I'm currently a senior special education teacher. And our co-host is Jeff.
Hi. So I'm Jeff Wong. I also actually started off in the field in 2020, right after COVID. Also started off as an IT. I have my bachelor's in Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a continuing education program in behavioral sciences. I'm currently actually also pursuing a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I currently work as a lead therapist.
Nice.
Perfect. I heard someone come in, so give me 1 second.
No worries.
No, it's just
Hi, Chris. Hi, Joyce.
Hello.
Can everybody see my screen and hear me?
Hi.
Yeah, we could hear you.
Okay, perfect. For those of us who just came in, we were just introducing ourselves a little bit. Okay, so this is just a disclaimer that the information that we're going to be presenting in this webinar is strictly for educational purposes, and it's not to substitute for professional advice. So if you are looking for that, you would have to have a full assessment conducted, such as a functional assessment. And you would have to actually get a BCBA to do this. So like I said, this is for educational purposes, and you can do what you want with the information that we're providing. And this is what I was saying earlier. I can pass that. Okay, before we get started, does anyone want to tell me a little bit about themselves and what brought you here? No?
That's all right.
That's okay. If you're not comfortable, that's totally fine. So we'll just get started. So our table of contents. So we're going to be starting off with what is behavior, who has behavior, and some examples. We'll then start looking at the functions of behavior. There are 4 functions, but we're only going to be focusing on attention-seeking behavior. We'll then go into some of the techniques that we utilize for attention-seeking behavior. We can also have questions and answers and an open chat at the end. Keep in mind throughout this video, feel free to jump in at any point if you have questions or if you need some clarification on anything. And Jeff and myself can help answer those questions.
All right. So just to start off, we're going to talk about what is behavior, who has it, and some examples. So behavior is anything that a human being or animal does. In ABA, behavior is defined as measurable actions emitted by an individual. So key components are that the behaviors have to be observable, measurable, and has to involve an action. A lot of times the example that we give is something called the dead man's test. So if a dead man can't do it, if a dead man can do it, then it won't be considered a behavior. Mm-hmm. So we have some examples listed here. So like kicking, eating, writing, walking, raising your hand in class, and requesting for assistance are some example of behaviors. If anybody would like to participate and can think of any examples of behaviors, you feel free to throw them out now.
Like what kind of behavior?
Anything that you would consider one.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can't remember, but like it was like last year over behavior over a stupid dog. Not me though, was somebody else.
Okay, so what behavior did you observe?
Oh, I win. It was like fighting over a dog.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
Does anyone else have any examples of behavior?
So like yeah, it led to conflict and like.
So the thing with behavior is a lot of times it's like it's thought of as something negative, but behavior can actually also be any sort of observable action. So
Like yeah, verbal and
yeah, of course,
physical.
Yeah, I do really like that point, Jeff, because when we say behavior, a lot of people will make an assumption that we're talking about challenging behaviors. But when in ABA, when we talk about behavior, we can look at behaviors we want to decrease, those challenging ones, but we can also refer to positive behaviors that we want to see increase. So we can look at how anybody writes, how anybody speaks. Those would all constitute as behaviors as well. Is everybody clear on that?
Yeah, that's true. All there's different types of behavior, but that's true.
Yeah, I have an example.
Yeah.
3-year-old son, and a 6-year-old daughter, and I feel like they're typical boys and typical girls behavior. So my son really enjoys destroying things, or like kind of not hard hitting, but like playfully hitting. So yes, as you alluded to, that there's positive behavior, there's negative behavior. I think he's attention seeking, so that's probably where it stems from. He's not like just straight up just being bad, but yeah, I'm just trying to understand it a little bit and have perspective on it.
Perfect. That's great, and I'm glad that you're here. If you are assuming that it is attention seeking, so in your case, we would say property destruction if he's throwing things, or throwing is a behavior, hitting is another behavior. And like Jeff said, it would have to be something that we can measure. So in ABA, we don't just think of the next step that we would have to do when we look at behaviors. We would actually have to take data on it, which would count as that measurable perspective. Thank you for participating, everyone. Okay, so the 4 functions of behavior in ABA is attention, escape, tangible, and sensory. So anytime that we conduct an assessment, we would make behaviors fall into one of these functions. For today's video, as I said, we're only going to be focusing on attention seeking.
So next few slides, we're going to break down what is attention-seeking behavior, some examples of it, what do we do when we do see those behaviors, and some of the examples that are listed that we can do to address these behaviors are differential reinforcement, replacement behaviors, non-contingent reinforcement, and functional communication, which they might sound like a lot of big words right now, but we'll kind of condense them and simplify them for you as we go along with the presentation.
Just out of curiosity, has anyone ever heard of these terms before, or are these brand new to everybody?
Oh, never heard of it.
No? Okay. And that's okay. Anyone else? Is this new to you?
Yeah, it's new.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so what is attention-seeking behavior, and what are some examples? So when we keep saying attention-seeking behaviors, it refers to any observable action or verbal expression displayed by an individual with the primary purpose of getting somebody else's attention. So some examples could be making vocal requests repeatedly until somebody until somebody notices it. Engaging in disruptive actions. Again, remember it is attention seeking, so they are doing this for the sole purpose of getting somebody's attention. Hitting others or themselves. Throwing items or objects. So when we talk about attention seeking, when we give attention to somebody else, it could be a reprimand, saying something like, no, you don't do that, you don't hit others. It could just be simply giving them eye contact. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that behavior can function as attention seeking? Any behavior?
Yeah.
Okay. And why do you think that?
I don't know. I just think they're looking for attention.
Okay. Perfect. Anybody else?
Or like the way they dress or something, or the way the person dresses, or depends like the type of what they're wearing. That's kind of like, isn't that like attention seeking?
So for the sole purpose of this, we're talking about the way people behave to get attention. So like when we listed off some of the behaviors like hitting, kicking, if we want to increase writing or reading, stuff like that. Do you think that all behaviors can be attention seeking?
That's a good question. Not sure. Depends what depends, like what they write or like.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because it is very dependent on context, right? So if you are writing appropriately, like in a classroom, and your teacher praises you, right? That's something we want to increase. That is attention seeking, right? Like, I'm doing this because I want the attention of my teacher. But alternatively, in a different setting, say the person's writing on the walls, and the teacher reprimands them and says, hey, don't do that. That's not what you're supposed to do. They're still obtaining that attention from the teacher. However, this might be a behavior that we might want to see decrease. But again, as Emilia mentioned, like, we would have to take data on it to see how often it's happening, the duration, frequency of it, before we implement any sort of strategies.
That's true.
With that being said, too, I asked this question for the sole purpose of any behavior can be attention-seeking depending on the client, but behavior can also have multiple functions. So you can have that same behavior in one moment being attention-seeking, and then in the next, it can serve a different function. Anyone have questions about this slide?
No, I already said my question.
Perfect.
So this is one of the strategies we kind of spoke about earlier. It's differential reinforcement. And this is a concept in ABA that involves basically reinforcing or withholding reinforcement for specific behaviors. And the reason we do this is to increase the occurrence of the behaviors that we want to see, or desirable behaviors. And when we withhold the reinforcers, we want to reduce or eliminate undesirable behaviors. So the example we have here is a student is yelling in class to get attention. And as the teacher, you want the student to raise their hand. So you would ignore the yelling and reinforce raising the hand in the classroom. To kind of elaborate more on that example, if you were to even give the child any sort of, hey, maybe you can not do that, please stop that, you're already kind of giving the child what they want, which is the attention. However, completely ignoring it and waiting until maybe the behavior stops and then giving them the advice, hey, you can raise your hand, would be a way to differentially reinforce. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay.
No questions?
Nope.
Okay. Does everyone understand this idea and how it can be used not only in the classroom but out in the environment as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so the next slide is about replacement behavior, which goes hand in hand with what Jeff was talking about with differential reinforcement. So when we talk about behaviors, we always want to find a replacement behavior that involves identifying a more socially appropriate and desirable behavior to replace that existing behavior that is problematic, harmful, or you just want to see decrease. A reminder is when we're selecting the replacement behavior, it is crucial to ensure that the chosen alternative serves the same function as the original behavior, addressing the individual's needs and motivations in a more socially appropriate manner. So, what that means is if the function is attention, right? And if we're talking about yelling in the classroom, just like Jeff had mentioned, we would want to find the replacement, which is raising hand and still getting attention, to serve the same function, to make sure that the learner is still getting attention, but just in a more appropriate way. So we would never want to just say, well, I want this behavior to decrease. I'm not doing anything else about it, because typically that doesn't work. We would always want a replacement behavior to allow our learners to understand those socially acceptable behaviors out in the classroom, out in the environment, grocery shopping, going to the mall, going to a restaurant. So together, let's think of replacement behaviors for the following. Okay, again, we're only talking about attention seeking. So let's say we have a child who is hitting others. When we talk about replacement behaviors, hitting others is for attention. So what do you guys think would be a replacement behavior to replace hitting but still serves as attention? Does anyone want to try?
Well, repeat the question.
Yeah, sure. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look at the replacement behaviors. So where it says number 1, hitting others, number 2, screaming. And we're going to come up with a replacement behavior to decrease hitting and increase a more functional behavior, a more socially acceptable one.
Yeah.
So if we want to decrease hitting others for attention, what can we replace that behavior with? What can we basically substitute it, and the learner is still getting attention, but just in more appropriate ways?
Speaking to that person. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Like, you mean teaching the child to speak to the person, or are you speaking to the child?
You speaking to the child.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when we say speaking to the child, after this child has hit, let's say, another child, we would be providing attention. But so that wouldn't necessarily be a replacement behavior, but we could have the child ask another peer for something, right? What do you think you can have the child do? Request for what?
Either like speak to them outside, like privately.
So it seems like you're talking more about speaking with the child about whatever actions they had just done. So this would be similar to like a reprimand, letting them know, hey, like what you did wasn't okay. The thing is, when you do that, you are already reinforcing this child for attention. So they're already getting what they want. With replacement behaviors, we want to give them a way to get that attention, maybe not even from you, maybe from another child, in a way that's appropriate. So, for example, you see kids in the playground hit each other, and the kid runs away laughing because his mom has gone and told him, "Don't do that, Tommy." Like, he's already getting what he wants. We're trying to teach this child now, what's another way he can get that attention from mom, or what's another way he can get that attention from another child.
Right, without hitting, right? Does anyone have any other suggestions? No? Okay. So for this specific case, if a child is hitting others for attention, we can have that learner maybe go and request for attention from another peer or an adult saying, "Look at me," and then that person is looking. So that way, in that sense, hitting others to get attention decreases, but requesting to look at that person is now increasing. That's one example. Jeff, do you have another one?
I think that would probably be the route I would take too. Just teaching them how to functionally communicate. Again, like, it doesn't always have to be words. It doesn't always have to be words. Like, it can also be. Sorry. Joyce, we're just getting a lot of feedback from your side.
Perfect. There you go.
Yeah, so it doesn't always have to be verbal communication too. So, like, if we have a young learner, so somebody who's like 1 or 2 years old, even teaching them just to come up to mom and like tap her on the shoulder, or tapping another kid would be another appropriate way to get attention from whoever they need to get attention from.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, let's now go on to the second one. So we have someone who screams to get attention. What do you think we can do to replace that behavior? Does anyone want to give this one a try? No?
Okay.
Okay, so first screaming, I would teach them an appropriate volume or level to get our attention. So we would replace screaming at high audible noises to a more desirable one. So simply asking or talking at a normal level. Anything that you would do, Jeff?
No, pretty similar.
Yeah.
Again, mostly functional communication for both of these scenarios. Yeah.
Okay. So now when we talked about, when Jeff spoke about differential reinforcement, so ignoring the behavior that we want to see decrease and really praising on the behaviors we want to see increase, let's try to kind of put those two slides together. So if we have, let's say, a replacement behavior for hitting others. So instead of hitting, we'll use Jeff's example of tapping his mom or her mom on the shoulder instead. What would we ignore for differential reinforcement? What would we ignore? Would we ignore hitting others, or would we ignore tapping mom on the shoulder?
Ignore hitting.
Hitting,
yeah,
exactly. You got it. So we would ignore the hitting, and then we would really amp up our praise when the child taps mom's shoulder, right? Now, if the child doesn't have that skill, then we would have to teach that skill first. So we might have to prompt the learner we might have to like physically prompt our learner to tap the person or mom on the shoulder and praise until that is in their repertoire. Then we can praise it when the child does it independently. Does everyone understand that? Have any questions?
Sorry, I have a question. I think you previously were saying that instead of for hitting, like to ask them to look at you? Is that telling the kid to say that?
Yeah.
Or you as an adult saying that to them?
So you would want the child to be able to say it. The reason why I mentioned using the tapping on the shoulder is because for younger learners, sometimes they don't have the language yet. But ideally, you would want the child, if they have the language to do so, to be able to request, look at me, if that's appropriate in the context that they're in. The other thing is, in order to teach that, you might have to tell that child, oh, you can say, look at me. And then they would say, look at me. And then you'd be, yeah, I love that you said that. That would be an example of how to approach that scenario and how to kind of teach that replacement behavior. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So what if it's like their behavior is attention seeking, but it's not that they're actually trying to get you to look at them. Like say like they're playfully hitting. Like it's not like your attention is somewhere else and then trying to get you to look. Not that type of attention seeking, but the I'm gonna break my sister's castle because for the hang of it, for the fun of it, and
Right.
you perceive it as they are trying to seek attention of somebody, and that's why they're doing that. Not just destructive for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
That type of attention seeking.
Right. You want to?
So what do you do for that kind of thing to like help with that or reinforce?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you would have to think about what is the replacement behavior first, right? Or what you also want to differentially reinforce, which is what we talked about in the slide before this one, so the previous one. So in your example, the child is breaking his sister's castle and trying to get, like, the way that I would think, and I don't know if you think about this differently, Emilia, in that situation is the child is breaking the castle because he wants mom to reprimand him.
Yeah, and it can also be his sister's reaction.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the way I think about that scenario is that as a child, the sister might have a hard time ignoring that behavior because for her it's it's, oh my God, my castle I spent all day working on has now broken. But as a parent, you can definitely try, or the adult in the scenario could try to ignore that behavior and replace it with a different one. Or we're going to go into this later about non-contingent reinforcement, which I would think might be a better strategy for this scenario.
Yeah, and to touch on that a little bit more, if you do know that it's for attention, right? Like Jeff was saying, the replacement behavior for any sort of breaking an object or breaking something, you would then start teaching the replacement behavior, or the replacement skill of how to appropriately play. In this case, you might even have him ask his sister, hey, can I break it? Hey, can I knock it down? And if his sister says yes, that's great because he got attention appropriately in that matter. So you would always want to think of how can he increase certain behaviors, and in this case, you might want to look at like how can he appropriately ask, and how can he appropriately play with his sister in building that castle. And if he likes something like breaking toys, then maybe finding toys that are supposed to be broken or supposed to be built and taken out, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions?
Nope.
Nope.
Awesome.
Okay. So this is non-contingent reinforcement, which I was kind of mentioning might be the better strategy in the previous scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So in ABA, NCR stands for non-contingent reinforcement. And basically it is when you deliver reinforcement, at specific time intervals, regardless of the individual's behavior. So using the context of attention, a non-contingent attention would mean providing that person or individual with that what they want, which is the attention, without requiring them to engage in any specific behavior first. So this is what we call an antecedent strategy, or in simpler terms, a proactive one, to help reduce the behavior by ensuring that that individual is getting whatever their function is for the scenario attention, and decreasing the likelihood that they'll engage in those attention-seeking behaviors. We'll go through the example, and then if you guys have any questions of your own, you can feel free to ask us, and we can kind of try to problem solve whatever those scenarios are together. In this example, so a child tends to engage in disruptive behaviors to gain attention. A non-contingent attention strategy might involve periodically providing attention and positive interactions, even when the child is not engaging in that problem behavior. So the goal is to fulfill the child's need for attention proactively and reduce the motivation to engage in that disruptive behavior.
Yep, thank you, Jeff. So in short, what that really does mean is if you start noticing that your friend or child, in this case, I'll just say this child, wants attention every, let's say, 10 minutes, okay? What you would do is you would try to give as much attention as you possibly can before any challenging behaviors. So if you're providing all this attention, we say that that child might become satiated, that we've fulfilled the need for attention. So when that time comes that he wants attention or she wants attention, it's already been delivered by us so much that they're not going to actually behave or in challenging ways because we've already gave them all of the attention that they need.
So basically it is manipulating their motivation to do that thing in like simpler terms. So if they've already gotten so much attention from you, and they might feel like, oh, I don't need to go hit another kid, or I don't need to go break that toy in order for me to get somebody to talk to me or look at me.
Oh, what kind of hitting though? Like punching, like slapping, or like?
Yeah, any sort of physical kind of aggression. They might decrease that, or you might see a decrease in that because you're already providing them with what they want. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does.
Awesome. Any other questions? Sorry?
No, sorry. Before we go on, I just kind of wanted to explain a little bit on satiation, because I don't think maybe everybody understands it that well. But the example I always like to give is, think about eating food, right?
Yeah.
So you're really hungry is similar to the child. Oh, I need someone to look at me right now. You start to eat whatever it is. Let's say you're eating rice, and you get you eat two bowls of rice. You're feeling pretty full. So that means that child is getting the attention from you, right? The non-contingent reinforcement. They have a full belly of attention now. If someone was to offer you a third bowl of rice, you'd be very unlikely to eat that because you're satiated, meaning you've had enough food. And in the example of the child, he's had enough attention, so he might not want that third bowl of rice, which would be the hitting of another child.
Yeah, I like that example.
Yeah, I like that example also.
Any questions before we move on to the next slide?
No.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then the next one is functional communication, FCT. So FCT is a highly effective strategy that's been used in ABA to teach individuals more appropriate and effective ways to communicate their needs and desires. So FCT is particularly beneficial for individuals who engage in problem behavior to communicate. So like Jeff had mentioned earlier on, everyone's form of communication is different. So when we talk about functional communication, it doesn't have to be vocal. It could also be if a learner is on a PEX board, which is a picture exchange, or if they have some sort of communication device. So you can still have or teach this learner functional communication through their means of communicating. So for example, we talked about this a lot, is requesting for attention. So in this case, you can have the learner actually request verbally, I need attention, I want this. If they do have any sort of device, on the device you can actually get a picture of a help button, and they can press the button, or they can give you a picture of that, and that would serve as their way of communicating. And same thing for asking for help. Do you have anything to add to that slide, Jeff?
No, I think you covered it all pretty well.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So just a reminder that when you're doing any sort of intervention or protocol, you need to ensure you're increasing the interval to provide attention. So we want our interventions to fade out, which means the child will not need us eventually, and they'll be able to be reinforced by their natural environment. I guess, like, to elaborate more on that, you want to increase the amount of time in terms of attention. If you're trying to decrease the amount that you're seeing that behavior, you want to increase the amount of time that child can go without the attention of the peer or the attention of you.
Yeah, and with that being said, it's very unrealistic or very unnatural to have to provide attention every 5 minutes, right? That would require us to bring timers with us or use our phone. And if we're out at the movie theater or out at a restaurant, you're going to forget maybe. So this point is really important, is you would want to start by giving as much attention as you can in the beginning, but eventually we would want to fade that out, so that way the learner is not needing to engage in any problem behavior to get the attention from us or other peers. And any interventions that we have, we would always want to make sure that they eventually go into the natural environment, right? So anytime that this child goes out, for example, how we would normally and socially behave, they would eventually do that without the need of us, so to speak. Any questions?
No.
Okay, awesome. Okay, that leaves us to our questions and comments. We can even have an open discussion. We still have some time, so I can end this, and then we can come back here. Okay. So does anyone have any questions, comments, anything that they would like to share? Was this webinar helpful?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, good. Excellent. I'm glad. What part did you think was the most important for you, or the most beneficial that you might use?
Oh, like behaviors for like in a child, and like how they react.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Anybody
Did anybody
else?
have any questions or comments for either of us?
It was very helpful, though.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. And if there's any questions after this webinar, you just kind of want to ask a question through an email, feel free to do that. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. You can call, you can just email me. We don't don't have to do this online if you don't feel comfortable doing that. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, then... Oh, do you have something to say, Joyce?
No, just want to say thank you.
Oh,
Okay. Well, thank you for you guys for showing up. Thank you for your participation and listening. I really do hope that Jeff and I did a good job to educate you guys on some of the strategies that we use, and I'm hoping that one day you can use them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
thanks, guys. Take care.